Hello there, fellow peregrinos. My name's Bradley Chermside. I'm a two-time pilgrim. I have walked the Camino Portuguese, I've walked the Camino Frances, and I'm also the author of the international best-selling Camino de Santiago memoir, The Only Way is West. I'm also the host of the Camino de Santiago Pilgrims podcast. So, if you're ready for this week's episode, go grab your boots and let's go Camino! Good evening, hello there once again, fellow peregrinos. Welcome to El Camino de Santiago Pilgrims Podcast, episode 67, where we are talking to a man who has walked the Camino de Santiago, possibly in the Guinness Book of Records. I'm not sure, but 15 times. Maximov. We had the pleasure of having Max on the podcast back in May. He just walked the Camino just before lockdown, and he was walking with his daughter, which we can ask a little bit more about because we've had quite a few people asking recently about walking the Camino de Santiago with children. And since then, he's been back to the Camino and walked the Camino Frances during COVID times. So post-lockdown, or should I say between the two lockdowns, he managed to get himself on the Camino and the Camino Frances. So Max, welcome back to the podcast.
Hello and thank you, and it's great to be back.
And the reason I asked you on for a second time, Max, was not only because you've just walked during COVID times, but also because I've been taking a sneaky peek without you looking at some snaps that you've been taking on the Camino. And I did see that you were creating a Camino de Santiago calendar, which I thought was a great idea. And to be honest with you, I was so impressed with your photos, I'm going to have to order one off you. So make sure you let me know how to do that at the end. And yeah, I mean, I really love your photography work.
Thank you.
I love how you bring the magic of the Camino immediately alive in my heart when you put those pictures up. I love the lighting. I love the way that you kind of capture it during its most magical times. For example, one of my favorite times on the Camino is like kind of post siesta, when the world comes to life, when it's just cooling down a little bit, yeah, it's quite a bit of shall we say interruption on the line there. I don't know if it's my end or
I think I'm hearing pouring rain out of my window, so maybe it's that
rain. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an impressive amount of rain. It's like you're in Galicia again.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it
Wow.
sounds like it.
Yeah, so I love the way you instantly bring that magic to life and wash up all those feelings, and you seem to capture in it the most magical light. And I love those post Camino times as well, and sort of post siesta times. You know, when the world is kind of just waking up, it's just cooling down a little bit as well. So yeah, I'd love to kind of pick your brains about how you came to the idea of creating that calendar.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be happy to share, yeah.
And how you know when to capture those magical moments, But we'll go into a bit about more detail about that later. The question I'm going to ask you, Max, is 15 times you've been on the Camino, so I guess nearly 15 times or so you've been asked this question: what was your motivation for walking the Camino? And that's what you get asked at the Pilgrim office. Was it religious? Was it others? An adventure? What was your reason to go this time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and
15 times, Max. I mean, have you not had enough of it yet?
No. It's I would say it's only the beginning, and as far as the motivation, it's I would say every time it's different, and the more you know about the Camino, the more often you walk it, you kind of get to know what to expect. Although expectation is not really the word I like to use in the Camino context. But you just, I don't know, maybe like hit a life situation, or a life situation hits you where you're like, I think the Camino would be a really good idea now. So, and then, yeah, my first Camino was in the year 2000, let me just think, 2005. So it's quite a long time ago, and the motivation, the reasons behind it have changed and have varied considerably. I've done Camino coaching, for example, so like 5 or 6 Caminos I was leading groups, and a couple of times I walked, as you mentioned, with my daughter, so that was about that mostly. This time I really just, after the corona, the lockdown and everything, I it was not an easy time for me, as it was not for most people. And I just kind of remembered that when, as you mentioned, when being asked, why do you go to the Camino so often? My kind of by default answer is the Camino is a vacation for my soul. And that's exactly what I was looking for. And I set out in mid-September. So there was a bit of vacillation, like, should I go? Because things were just beginning to kind of glimmer with uncertainty and fear, and all these echoes of March and April were sort of seeming to resurface. But I really said to myself, I'm going to go on the Camino. I'm going to enjoy the Camino. I'm going to take time for myself. Unlike going with friends, with family members, with groups, this time I set out just to be on my own. And part of the reason was also to do some photography that I was missing for the project that you were mentioning. So yeah, that was really the motivation. Another vacation for my soul, another time for myself, and some dedicated photography time.
I mean, one of my favourite authors is a British author from like the 1800s, early 1900s. He's called Peter Fleming, and he always says going on an adventure like that is like it's a hard work for the body, but a holiday for the spirit. And I
I
think
love it. Yeah,
that's what you were
yeah.
looking for this time, right?
Not just this time, but this time in particular, yes, sir.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, what how was, I mean, you'd obviously the Camino pre-COVID was very fresh in your memory because you'd walked it back in March. Actually, you were on the Camino when lockdown happened with your daughter, weren't you?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the lockdown hit us actually 40 kilometers before Santiago. We were in Arsua, having it was March, let me think, 13th in the evening. We checked in at the municipal albergue. Everything, was relatively fine. Although for the last few days we had been seeing, panic in people's eyes when we walked into, a bar or restaurant. Everybody was glued to their TVs, and we were just kind of like ignoring it by and large. But yeah, so it was. We were having supper with a few other pilgrims, and it was announced on TV that we weren't paying attention to the TV. But then the waiters told us, hey, by the way, starting tomorrow, everything is going to be closed, lockdown, blah blah blah. Nobody really knew exactly what it meant, so we actually just continued, and we did that stage 40 kilometers into Santiago on foot, walked into completely abandoned ghost town Santiago. I think from the place from the point of entering it to the cathedral, we didn't see more than 10 people, which is really, really, really eerie. But yeah, so that was the March Camino, and it was, I mean, obviously, yeah, it was fresh in my mind. There were some good memories, but also lots of kind of these sort of like a bitter aftertaste kind of memories. But I also just recently looked, I actually posted on my Instagram page, reposted it, some of the stats. So in 2020, January and February were record months in terms of numbers of numbers of Compostelas issued. March was already a nosedive. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, March of this year compared to March of the year before, we're talking about maybe 1/8 of the pilgrims, and we could certainly sense it and see it and witness it. And yeah, so the memories were quite fresh. And I actually, part of the reason I wanted to go was also to get rid of some of those, yeah, rather negative memories, I'd say.
Mm. And I wonder how your preparation differed this time. Like safety precautions you took. I mean, we know that pretty much most of the Camino is closed right now. But safety precautions you took and you'd recommend others take if and when the Camino opens again, um, until, for example, quote unquote, a vaccine is found. And any specific safety precautions you took this time?
That's a good question. Yeah, I actually thought a lot about it, read a lot about it. In my place of work, I work with a few people from Spain who actually relatively regularly go back and forth to Spain, and so I was asking them, what is it like? I read the royal decree that is in place, I think,
Mm,
still in Spain, about what is allowed, what is not allowed. There's this interesting and very ambivalent sort of clause there that states that if you are practicing sports, you don't have to wear a mask, for example. Because one of the biggest questions I was asking myself was, well, as I walk the Camino, I mean, I understand towns, villages, and whatnot, but if I'm out in the open, do I have to have the mask on at all times? And so that's kind of one of those gray points because, I wasn't able to find a clear answer to that question because you can, I guess, qualify it as exercising, in which case you're exempt from that rule, but not really, in which case you're not. So yeah, I mean, as far as packing, I just actually this time after after 14 times, I can say that I really finally optimized my packing to the T. So it's absolutely perfect now. I had exactly the right gear, minus a sweater that I had to get in Leon because I did not expect the temperatures to drop to 2 degrees in the mornings, and 2 degrees Celsius. And but I just kind of I told myself, I'm going to Spain. Like everything is available. If I'm lacking something, I can acquire it there. Um, yeah, I had a few, masks, I guess, with me, but that's really about it because I could not really get kind of a clear, straight line of an answer what to expect. And my, very first albergue, I walked in and I did not know what to expect at all. I was told that they needed to spray my boots, they needed to spray my backpack with disinfectant, and I just went with the flow. I'm like, okay, if this is the policy, that's the policy. So they did that, but then other than that, everything was normal. I mean, I wore all the open areas, and so my first experience was, yeah, I mean, it was a bit strange, but but understandably acceptable. And so, yeah, and then, yeah, as the Camino went on, I can tell you. But as far as like, packing extra stuff, for example, I debated if I needed to bring gloves or not, because I read somewhere, yeah, I should have this, set of things with gloves, and I don't know. I decided if I needed gloves, Camino provides. I guess Camino would provide, and I never needed them, and so I guess I was quite fine without them. I did have a little bottle of alcohol, or for my hands that I did use on occasion, but other than that, just the masks.
So pretty obvious additions to the kit list. So masks, surgical gloves, potentially hand sanitizer, just kind of common sense things.
Exactly.
And in terms of the the camaraderie between pilgrims, was that present, or people keeping their distance, people conscious? How was the atmosphere with other pilgrims?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really deserves a lengthy answer too, because again, in this respect, I also did not know what to expect, and just about as quickly as I got on the Camino, I started talking to people, started hearing that the number of pilgrims compared to the year before, and I also walked the Camino actually exactly the same stretch 3 years ago in 2017, to the day basically. So the number of pilgrims was about 20% of the year before. We're talking one-fifth of the pilgrims were on their way. As far as places open, about 40% of albergues, bars, restaurants, and establishments like that were open. So there were fewer people for more spaces, yet many spaces were noticeably closed that I even remember being open normally. Um, the first night, well, I mean, as you know, when you get on the Camino, it takes a couple of days to kind of, actually engage in conversation, start meeting people. My first impression, I started in Subiri this time, and which is a day after Roncesvalles or 2 days after Saint Jean Pied de Port. So yeah, I mean, I checked in an albergue. I went out for dinner. There were precaution measures, like you had to wait to be seated in an outside area, but there were pilgrims around. They were chatting, they were having a good time, so there was no sense or feeling of stress or distress on anybody's part. Um, and nobody was nervous, nobody was scared, freaking out, or anything like that. A few days later, I built a really, really awesome, or I guess joined a really awesome Camino family. There were there was a kind of a nucleus of about five of us, and then an extended group of people, about 12, 15 people that we, obviously constantly ran into and kind of floated towards westwards, I guess I should say, with. And the feeling there was incredible. The kinds of people that I met this time, from the point of view of like, there's the quantity was less, the quality was, I would say, higher on average. Not that I didn't meet awesome people before, but I think I gave it a lot of thought. I think part of the reason was everybody, literally everybody I talked to had vacillated just as I did. Should I go? Should I not? Do I cancel my flight last minute because things are kind of getting bad? And those who actually did go had, I guess, more of a reason to go. And so that the Camino already, as it is something that kind of filters a few people out, because not everybody, like my sister, for example, she would never go on the Camino. She tells me, I'm happy you love it. Give me the beach. This is my thing. And it's completely understandable. So, but this time there was this other added filter, kind of like, oh, this vacillation, this last pressing the button. Or if your flight gets canceled, do you rebook it and do you still go to do you fight the gods of travel and do you say, yes, I'm still going to do it? That's one thing. And another thing is this time, like never before, I've met tremendously many people who had walked the Camino for months. So I met people, I had met some before, but people who left Germany, who walked from Holland, who walked from Belgium. So long-term sort of like hikers who, when I met them, had already been walking for a couple of months. Again, as I said, you meet them once in a while in regular Caminos as well, but this time there was a lot more of those, I guess. So yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
The hardcore pilgrims that you met, many of those
Oh,
along the way this time.
yes,
The
many.
ones that have done crazy stuff like walking from their front doors.
Yeah, exactly. And so this time there were so many of them that it actually seemed like a normal thing to do,
Yeah.
as opposed
What
to,
do you mean you flew here? What's wrong with you?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, one guy that actually met my very first night in Subiri. He and I guess his Camino buddy, they were both from Germany, and one of them was walking from Germany I'm going to say just to Santiago. The other one was walking with his dog, and his idea was to go to Santiago and then on to Rome and then to Jerusalem. So yeah,
My lord.
yeah.
That's impressive. Max, you did mention earlier that you optimized the 15th time you've been on the Camino, and this time you felt like you optimized it. For someone to optimize their packing then, can you give what's the most important piece of advice you'd give to optimize your packing?
Well, certainly not to overpack, not to take anything where you wonder, should I take it? Maybe yes, maybe no. If you wonder about that, then the answer is no. And I mean, for me, I was carrying quite a bit of photography equipment. So I had a tripod that weighs about a kilo, maybe a bit less, and I had a camera that also weighs about the same. So, I mean, I'm pretty strong. I can carry it all, but I really wanted to just keep my particularly just the clothing down to the T. So it's the pair of hiking boots and hiking sandals to change out the footwear, three pairs of socks, three pairs of underwear, three t-shirts, one long sleeve t-shirt and one light sweater, a rain jacket, a poncho, a sleeping bag, obviously. But as far as the clothing goes, okay, I had a hat and I had a scarf, or what do you call those things? It's called like hat thing, where you can use it on your head, you can use it around your neck.
I think most people are tending to call that kind of accessory a buff these days.
A buff, yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
in England we'll call it a snood maybe, but yeah,
Oh, there you go, yeah, yeah.
snood. I don't know, buff or a snood, but yeah, it's something that's got multi-purpose.
Exactly, yeah. And then I had two pairs of pants, both this time hiking pants, and one of them unzips to form shorts. The other one is just long, and I had long kind of thermal pants, which I actually did end up using. I did not think I would, but I did. And obviously, it really largely depends when you go. In the summer, I guess you probably could do without a thermal long sleeve shirt because, between your t-shirt and the sweater, it'll be fine. But if anytime March, April, which is normally my favorite time to walk, or September, October, which is my second favorite time to walk, you could not do without. And as I said, actually we had some really, really cold nights in on the Meseta. Walking out of the albergue, we had 2 degrees outside. So when I got to Leon, I ended up picking up probably the best pullover that I own. It's incredible. It was worth every penny I paid for it, and it'll last me a while. But that's exactly my point. So like even if you don't bring a bit less maybe, because you will often at regular intervals encounter towns where you can, where they have not just like Pilgrim supply stores, but just shops where you can buy, well, normal as well as hiking clothes, footwear, what have you. So yeah, I would recommend to pack less, and just to know that you're not going. I was just talking with my wife about my Inca Trail hike in Peru, where you actually cannot get anything. So if you haven't packed well, you're out of luck. Whereas on the Camino, that is not the case. You are still in Europe and the European Union. There are stores, there are cities. You can get anything.
Yeah, and what I take from that as well, if I'm a first-time pilgrim or someone looking to refine my packing routine, and like you said, if you are in doubt about a piece of equipment or clothing or whatever it may be, then you probably don't need it. Leave it behind, and if there is a scenario that comes up that eventualizes where you do need it, you'll be able to buy it anyway. So to optimize, if in doubt, throw it out. There you go.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's summarize it that way. If in doubt, throw it out. Okay, so you mentioned like some statistics, and a few episodes ago we spoke to the CEO of Follow the Camino, which is a Camino tour company, and he
Hmm.
said their business, and I guess this is a situation that's mirrored throughout the Camino. Like 95% of their business has gone
Yeah.
since COVID kicked in. Did you see any examples of that kind of deterioration and yeah, the reduction in services? I mean, are there less services on the Camino now for a pilgrim? That makes it. My point is it harder with those less services?
I'm not familiar. I've heard of the company. I'm not familiar with exactly what types of services they provide. I think
I'm more talking about like the
probably.
businesses along the way and stuff. Like
Mhm,
he said, like his business was down 95%, and that
mhm.
situation, I guess, the locals and the albergues, they're obviously suffering as well as we all have this year.
Right.
So I'm just saying, did
Mhm.
was that lack of did that materialize? Has that materialized on the Camino? Maybe I should have made my question more clearly. Has that
Mhm.
materialized as less provisions, making it harder for you along the way?
So yeah, it's a really really good question, and I thought a lot about it, and I talked a lot about it on the Camino because obviously having been there so many times, I know people. I know quite a few people who run albergues, so I'd sit down and chat with them for a while, and other services as well. Um, the simple answer is yes, but it is not that simple. So I think one large sector of providing services has to do with providing kind of um, pick up, bring to destination, accompany kind of service to pilgrims that come from far away. And because many countries were really actually shut out of the European Union, many like
Mm.
far away countries, particularly Australia, particularly the United States, actually in the first place, and then Korea, Japan, Australia, Latin America. That was felt. So those providers of services to like long distance sort of travelers and bookers, they were. I can see how I mean, 95% sounds like a lot, and but in that regard, I can see that as far as providing kind of day-to-day local services. So I mean, I would probably say that in small villages where you have one or two bars, and of course, as you know, a bar on the Camino is the place where you have breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's not just a place to go drink alcohol. It's where you get all the food and drinks and everything. So because in half the place, because half the places on the Camino, I would say, are small villages, the locals tend to these places just as much as the pilgrims do, and so those are open. They're not obviously doing as much business as they normally would, with without the influx of pilgrims, but they were still open. They were still offering services. I did not know, or I did not see many of those closed kind of permanently. Now, as far as albergues, that's where it gets tricky. The pilgrim hostels, they had to reduce their capacity of admittance to 50%, which of course was wonderful for us pilgrims because we had more space in more rooms, I guess. But obviously, it's a considerable reduction in service to the tenders of hostels. I would say, as I said before, I think a good half of the hostels was closed, and I did either read or come across some statistic on the Camino that suggested that about, if you count all the Caminos de Santiago in Spain, so the northern route, the French, and all the other ones, about 20,000 businesses will have closed and will not reopen anymore, and that is horrible.
Mm.
Now, whether it's true or not, it's really hard to assess as you kind of walk into a place like, oh, oops, this place is closed. You don't really know if it's, as a pilgrim passing through, if it's closed permanently, if it's closed just for the season. So what I do know is lots of albergues that normally would stay open until about now, until about the end of mid or end of November, were folding tent and were closing down for this. So they were closing the season down early. Now, will they reopen or not? That's another question.
Or
Um,
ever.
or ever, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but yeah, so I think it really depends. To come back to your question, I think it really depends on what kind of service in question we're talking about. But the essential services, the lack of essential services was not felt. There was something that was felt where, normally I would never even think about, calling ahead to make a reservation. This time there were two problems. The first problem was that there was no comprehensive app or set of information that would be updated daily to tell you which hostels are open and which are not. And so that was a big problem. And so I think after about a week's walking, me and some other people that I met, we were walking together. We started really just calling ahead and asking, are you open? Are you not? If nobody picks up the phone, we assume they're not open. And so find a place that is open, making a reservation, making sure a place to stay, and have it. Now, that said, everybody who we walked, there was never a time that anybody would be actually out of place, because if one town is completely booked out, which seldomly happened, the next town would have something. So there were no problems like that, but like I said, kind of this jittery mind inconvenience where, like, I kind of need to know, I need to put myself under pressure to decide in the morning where I want to spend the night, which to me personally is weird because I'm kind of this like free pilgrim. I walk as long as I want to, and when I decide I don't want to walk anymore in some town, that's where I look for a place. So that was a bit more challenging.
So did you feel like the sense of freedom was reduced on this Camino compared to previous Caminos?
No, no, no. I would not go as far as saying that. It's just the sense of having to plan a bit
Mm.
more,
It was
or
more
be.
important.
It was more important, yeah. And I never walked a Camino, the French Camino. I've walked once in the Camino del Norte in the summer, but this is how I imagine the Camino in the summertime, where there was just so many pilgrims that you're kind of you're forced to call ahead, book ahead, and stuff like that, which I usually prefer to spare myself, which is why I prefer to walk in March, April, September, October. So yeah, I mean, the sense of freedom was not taken away by any means at all. And again, as I said, the company was incredible. The weather was wonderful. The services were there in the amount needed. Frankly, Brad, I would say that the French Camino is, it's designed, or it's been for the last decade at least, it's been conditioned to sustain the summer influx of numbers of pilgrims, which is astronomical. And so, if we talk about a 60% reduction compared to that, it's still there was still plenty of everything. There was no lack of any services, no lack of anything whatsoever. And I think the big question is the future, because this year, this season, as you said, there are territorial, or I guess what do they call them in Spain, kind of confined locality based lockdowns in place. It's not a full lockdown like there was in March and April and May, but when the Camino rebounds, even with the calculation that many businesses will not come back, there will still be enough services rendered to pilgrims. Again, and let's remember, when we're on the Camino, unlike being somewhere else on holiday, our expectations are also much more moderate. We don't really need that much, and finding places to eat, places to sleep is about it, and that was found this time and will be found for sure when the new season comes.
Yeah, and also you did mention there, Max, like the local confinements that were starting to be put in place when you walked it. I mean, my wife and I were planning to walk the Camino del Norte back in August.
Mm-hmm.
We had the flights booked. We had accommodation in Bilbao booked already, and then we saw the numbers starting to creep up, whispers and rumours of local lockdowns. We couldn't have gone anyway because I ended up finding out my knee was in a bit of a mess. But what I want to ask is that for someone that maybe wants to be intrepid, and they're thinking, right, as soon as Spain opens again, or as soon as I can get there and get walking again, how should people, and how did you keep abreast, keep up to date with where those local lockdowns were happening? Because that's really important, isn't it?
Yes, it is very important. And as
Because
far as
there's
the
got to be
community,
whispers and fear in the air, like, can we keep walking? Can we not keep walking? If I go into
yeah,
this town, can I get out again? I mean, how do you deal with that when you're on the way?
yeah, it's a really good question. Just one quick comment about the Camino del Norte. Now, what I was talking about had to do with the French way. I had a friend who was walking actually the northern way. She was only walking a part of it from Irun to maybe to Bilbao, and she was reporting, and we were talking, I think, end of August, early September, that there pretty much all the albergues, the hostels were closing, and pilgrims were kind of forced to either camp out or stay in hostels or
Wow.
in more expensive accommodation, which by the way they kind of dropped the prices a bit, so even that would have been affordable. But it was certainly the French way is what I was talking about. The other ways were hit, I think, in terms of services rendered much more considerably, and that was felt in more ways. Now, to your question about keeping abreast, that is actually my answer is probably going to surprise you. I decided before going in the Camino to completely unplug. And my big having again, this is someone talking who has been in the Camino a lot and who knows kind of what to expect. I'm not necessarily recommending it for anybody or everybody, but the Camino in general does provide this sort of environment where it is a good way. If you ever wonder like what life would be like without Facebook, without Instagram, without this and that for a while continuously, that is a place to kind of actually try and do it. Camino provides in the sense of the news as well. That's what I told myself. I was I was looking every day about what the re-entry requirements into Germany, what they were doing, how they were changing, what to expect. Basically, the only thing I saw that was that they were changing, not necessarily day by day, but like week by week. And so I told myself, if I'm going for for 4 weeks, there's no point for me to staying abreast of that because I cannot do anything about it anyway. If And this is probably why the experience in March helped me because I actually went through a complete shutdown of Spain and I got out and everything was really, I mean, there was no problem. Everything was fine. I got on the plane and flew out. So, having had that experience, I wasn't really freaking out. And I told myself, if if something should go wrong really badly, I would be told. People on the way would inform me, be it Hospitalero at the nearest albergue, be it the police that would stop me and tell me you need to get out of our country now or whatever. And again, it's I decided not to worry about it, and I honestly, I was completely unplugged. We were so a couple of things that happened on the Camino as far as news that I was also filtering as far as, do I want to let things penetrate my mind, or do I want just to have a freedom of mind and be in the here and now? Um, I was in Leon, I think, I want to say probably at the end of September. And anyway, 3 days after I left Leon, the news caught me that Leon had this local confinement. And that was the first one. Now, that said, there was still this provision that pilgrims could actually pass through Leon. They were not allowed to stay in Leon. So again, it's not like what we had in March or April. And as you said yourself, even now there's still very few pilgrims, but the Camino is kind of shut down, but it's not the same as it was in March and April. And there are still pilgrims on the way. People still post, "Hey, I just got to Santiago today," and it does work somehow still. So I would say I think the more important question is in this context is how much, how do I want to go about the flow of information, about this like ocean of information that I normally swim in, and here I end up just kind of sailing a very nice, peaceful river. Do I want to keep the storm with me, or do I want to leave it behind me? I know I'm kind of sounding a bit esoteric here, but it's really this Camino gave me that opportunity, and I was fine throughout. I told myself I would worry about re-entry requirements to Germany when I board the plane to Germany, and that's exactly what I did. I landed in Frankfurt. I did tests or COVID test at the airport, and yeah, a day later I had a negative result, and that was that.
I think it's one thing as well that I took out of what you said there, Max. You mentioned about the way the local confinements are policed. Now, I can only compare. I mean, we are in lockdown in the UK right now, in England. And I know that obviously the conditions now aren't as extreme as they were back in March and April. But I can tell you, back in March and April, when I was on Spanish territory, that the way confinements were policed was extremely strict.
Yeah, I heard stories about that as well.
Like extremely strict. It's we were back in Spain, and we weren't allowed out of the house for 50 days to exercise, and it was policed. And if you were driving between towns, there were, I'm not exaggerating now, there were armored personnel vehicles and military personnel
hmm
monitoring entry and exit into towns,
hmm
as well as the local police force, the national police force, and the Guardia Civil.
hmm
So you've got,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
I
crazy,
heard
right? And then you
really,
come home to England
yeah,
and you go
it's
on
insane.
quote unquote, sorry, I've said this before already, this point, lockdown. And it's like carnival in the country parks. It's packed with people walking their dogs. And it's, very jovial, nice atmosphere. But what I'm asking about is, what would you say to pilgrims who think, okay, they're going to walk the Camino, even if it's during COVID times? Um, what to expect in terms of how they can stay within the law,
Um,
and obviously what they can, and how that law is policed and kept in
mhm.
force.
Yeah, I think the information is always there and it always finds you while you're on the Camino.
Did you
If there are
see
any.
evidence of the heavy police presence and
No,
military
no, no,
personnel?
not at
No.
all, not at
Oh
all. I
wow.
heard crazy stories like no, when
Right.
when I was walking, I got back a month ago, so it was not things I guess were not as bad even in Spain, and so there was no threat, no police. I gauge it. I try to gauge it more by just like observing the situation in places where locals kind of get together. So like you walk into a village in a bar, like is there nervousness in the eyes of the waitress as she looks at the TV screen, or is there not? So because
Okay.
because I had seen a lot of that in March, this time everything was chill. I talked to people. I stayed at this lovely hostel albergue in Moratinos on the Meseta, which is like 7 kilometers or maybe 9 kilometers away from a larger town of Sahagún, and about 30 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken, away from going backwards east from also a larger town of Castrojeris. Now, Sahagún happens to be, well, basically the tenants of the albergue, they always, drive 10 kilometers to go to Sahagún to get their groceries and everything. But there happens to be the border between the provinces right there. And so Sahagún is already in the province of León, versus Moratinos is at the edge of the province of Palencia. And so they tried to go a couple of times on the road that they would always take, and they would be stopped and turn around and said, no, you are from the province of Palencia, you cannot enter province of León, you have to go back, even though it means, you need to drive 30 kilometers to buy your bread. So that's how absurd, I guess, it must have been in Spain. And I think Spain learned its lessons, and I think people are, I mean, not just Spain, I think the whole world, and we're just kind of approaching the situation differently now. Back to your question, I think the big thing will be the macro news. The European Union will have to, first of all, open its, external borders, which is not just Spain's decision. It's going to be a EU level decision. Citizens of which countries to allow on the EU.
Schengen agreement, maybe, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's going to be a Schengen level decision, citizens of which country to allow or to keep barred. And so as that list will grow, that will be an indicator of the fact that things are pretty good. And, both here, because we don't, want to put other countries' citizens in danger, as well as in the countries of origin of the people that we're allowing to come. Now, as far as inside EU pilgrims, well, that is just going to depend on how things go internally in the EU. Because if the numbers, slow down, these things you monitor them. Things do not escalate overnight. And I guess when I started the Camino, things are, compared to the news today, they were still pretty, under control. In the month that I was walking in Spain, things kind of got a little bit out of control, but it's not like overnight you go from 1,000 cases to 1,000,000 cases. That does not happen. So therefore, the reactions to these things also take longer, and there's more time to react, replan, rebook, reconsider, redo, or whatever. And so if you're from anywhere in the EU, you will always be able to get back to wherever you need to go out of anywhere in Spain. If you're from outside of the EU, well, like I said, unfortunately, nowadays, many people from the States cannot even come here to begin with. So, my belief is when that changes, that will mean that things are back to relative normal or hopefully complete normal. And then there wouldn't be anything to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear that. And I'm by no means trying to spread fear at all.
No, no, of course.
I'm intrigued to know if similar things were happening in mainland Spain to, because these local confinements were popping up. And like you did mention the fact that you knew people that couldn't travel between two different provinces. That was policed.
That
But
in
you
March
didn't
and
see
April,
any. You
exactly,
didn't
yeah.
see any of that on, for example, as a pilgrim. You didn't experience that. But just to say why I asked that question,
Hmm.
not because I'm spreading fear, but I know what I saw in the Canary Islands, which is obviously Spanish sovereign territory,
Hmm.
and my wife and I experienced that. The way movements between towns was policed and monitored, and I wondered if something similar was going. I mean, just to put it into context, I looked into this in the Canary Islands during the confinement of March and April, and obviously May. There were 60,000 fines given out. Now,
Wow,
I think that the Canary Islands population is 2 million people. I
that's
know
a
there's
lot.
1 million in Tenerife, and I think with the other remaining islands, it comes up to 2 million. So that's 2 million people, 60,000 fines.
That's a lot of fines. Yeah.
In England and Wales, during the same time, 14,000 fines were given out. And we're talking a population of I guess, around about 55 to 60 million,
Hmm.
something like that. So that just gives you an idea of how keen and eager and how strict the rules were.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
so I
and
wondered
and
if that was
mhm.
still that level of strictness was still happening, was still alive on the mainland, or whether they had actually eased off a little bit and thought, you know what, our economy is closing down here. We need to actually be more welcoming.
Yeah.
So what I take away from that is if I'm going to walk the Camino during COVID times, and actually there's no reason for me to be fearful of encountering the authorities as I was, to be honest with you, in the Canary Islands. I was scared to
Hmm.
even go to the local supermarket. Now, some British people were saying over there they're glad that it was policed so strictly and it was so forcefully
Hmm.
put into place. Personally, I didn't like it. I thought it was a bit over the top. But
Hmm.
there's two sides to every story, and I can see positives and negatives to all of that. So I think
Sure.
you've given a really. I mean, I wanted to get you on, Max, because I know you're a very experienced pilgrim, and you've just walked it. Just really, close to lockdown. You've walked it post lockdown. You were lucky enough to get into that window of opportunity to walk it between lockdowns. So
It really
you're a
felt
very
like it.
unique
Yeah, towards
pilgrim to
the
get your
end.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, towards the end, really felt like when once one started hearing stories about like Leon has this partial confinement and this and that. It's like maybe this really was a good window because it felt good, the weather was good, the company was perfect, the services were there, and like yeah, it was just overall really nice. Yeah, as far as fines, like I said, I was referring to stories told in the time of the full lockdown in March and April. Now that said, Pamplona, my biggest city that I encountered in the Camino, they were, for example, extremely strict about enforcing the rule of wearing the mask.
Mm.
I did not experience it personally, but the albergue where I stayed, the hospitalero there told me, look, when you're outside, you have to wear a mask. There was a pilgrim here yesterday, an Italian pilgrim, who was fined 100 euros for not wearing a mask in the city. And the city was, let me tell you, packed full of people, and you would not want to not wear a mask. So, yeah, but that said, that was the beginning of my Camino, and was only one city, and nowhere else have I ever heard about that strictness, level of strictness about the mask, obligation. I would always keep it on, or like under my chin, I guess, just in case. And in situations where there would be 1.5 meters distance or 2 meters distance between me and other people, if I'm in a village, I'm having it under my chin. And again, I kept looking, what do locals do? Do they wear a mask? Do all of them wear masks? Do most of them just kind of have it on their, around strapped around their elbow, or around their neck or whatever? They're just gonna go with that because that kind of indicates to you. And again, what do their eyes tell you? Do they look at you reproachably when you don't have it on? Okay, then you just kind of like look back apologetically and pull it up. Just things like that, just common sense, I guess. Yeah, just going
Yeah.
with the flow and going with the situation, because you just, as a pilgrim, you just pass through so many situations. You don't know, if you hit a little village with a population of 18, you don't know what life is there like. Maybe they had been hit super hard by COVID, and maybe they just want that little more respect, even though, the nearest person next to you is like 10 meters away looking out of you, or looking at you out of the window or something. So yeah, just kind of follow your nose, I
No, I'm
guess.
really grateful for you sharing your experiences, Max, because, like I said, anyone that is going to go to the Camino as soon as they possibly can, they're going to need to know these things. They're going to need to know that, like you said before, when you first get to the albergues, it's very possible you might have your boots and backpack sprayed
And
with
temperature taken.
disinfectant. You can expect to have your temperature taken.
Hmm.
You can probably take planning in advance more seriously than you would have before because of the lack of capacity, 50% reduced capacity. To summarize other things you've said, add
Hmm.
useful additions to the kit list are going to be the masks, hand gels, some the potential for surgical gloves.
Hmm.
You won't necessarily have to wear your mask when you're walking through the woods or up in the mountain, but in the towns, cities, and villages, mask wearing is an absolute must. I can tell you, when I was in
Absolutely, yeah.
Tenerife, I have had a policeman tell me to put my mask on, and literally all I was doing was walking from my house to the local to the bins on the street to put my recycling out, and I got told to make sure I had my mask on, not in a threatening way, but they are enforcing it. So UK pilgrims, for example, I'm back in the UK now, and people don't wear the masks on the street, which is not law to do so, but in the supermarkets and stuff, you just do get people that just decide they're not going to wear it, and they don't seem to have any kind of reason for it. So you're just thinking, it's a little bit selfish, and they don't seem like they've got any problem. They just look like, oh, maybe they'll wear it, but they'll just wear it on their chin. So all I'm saying is, if you've got that kind of relaxed attitude to it in the UK or wherever you are, when you get to Spain, that you will not be able to be like that. You're going to have to put your mask on. So be prepared for that. And it's not always a pleasant experience walking along in 20-degree heat with a mask on your face. So just to know what you're going to be experiencing, you might find less accommodation, but it could be cheaper, which is good for the pilgrim, but not necessarily for the owners of the place. And like you said, there's no reason to be fearful from the police. And I think that Spain is actually looking to get as much people and as the economy thriving as much as they possibly can. So,
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've given some really, really a nice insight into walking the Camino during COVID times there, Max, and I'm really grateful for that. And I hope
My
the
pleasure.
listeners have got something from it if they can't wait to go and do it. So, Max, I'm intrigued now because I've been looking through, I've been kind of stealthing your Instagram and looking at your lovely pictures. And I'm intrigued. I mean, first of all, where did the idea for the Camino calendar come in? And secondly, how do you know when to catch those moments on the? Is it a matter of like you think, oh, there's going to be good light at this time, and you kind of like a bird watcher, you sit there and wait in the moment, or is it like you never know when inspiration strikes, or is it a bit
Yeah.
of both?
Yeah, I would say definitely a bit of both. To the first question, where the idea came from, I think it came to me before my first Camino in March. I just wanted to, I mean, I do a lot of Camino photography. I market and sell Camino photography, but I wanted to do something more from it. And I was traveling with my daughter. I brought all my equipment, and along the Camino, I think the idea it was I felt like I had enough good or decent Camino photography to fill the 12 pages for the 12 months, but still what I did not have was, again, what I kind of made a challenge for myself is to look. I wanted to compose the title page. I wanted to title it Buen Camino 2021, and I wanted those letters to come from the Camino. So I didn't want to write it. So my challenge to myself and for my daughter also was to find the letters on the Camino that I take pictures of and that will compose that those two words. So that's where it really started. And I did also want to have a calendar that depicts the Camino in. I wasn't too concerned with geographical order, so I
Max,
didn't
can I just
care.
stop you there for a second because I'm just looking at your Buen Camino title page right now. Is that you on the image?
No, it's my daughter actually.
Oh,
Four
amazing.
years 4 years ago, yeah, walking out of Barbadillo and into the fog. Yeah,
And
she
I
was
asked
10
that
years.
question just so people know because it's taken from the back, so you can see there's a walker in the distance, can't you? So
Yeah, yeah,
that's why
yeah,
it's not clear who's walking,
yeah.
and you've just captured such a magical image, like it's the silhouette or the a shadow, a figure walking into the mist.
It's a
Um,
thick
yeah,
Galician fog in the
yeah, and
morning
the
that.
grass is frosted as well. Is absolutely beautiful. And yeah, the way you've made the Buen Camino out of pilgrim shells, pilgrim arrows, and various different kind of um, objects that you've photographed along the way is really, really clever.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's that was the challenge for that. Yeah, and then it was like I was saying, it was more. I was more interested in not necessarily depicting the Camino geographically. Like, so the first picture has to be Saint Jean Pied de Port, last picture has to be Santiago de Compostela or Finisterre or whatever. My idea was actually to show the Camino in different seasons, which I think if one walks the Camino once, it's obviously impossible because you're only going to have summer pictures or winter pictures or whatever. And March provided me with the first day when my daughter and I walked. We walked through literally a winter wonderland around Fonsebadon and El Acebo. And yeah, I just that was the idea. And this time, when I walked on the Camino, as I mentioned in the beginning of our talk, I wanted to take some time for photography. I was going by myself. Uh, you know, anybody who does photography knows that going with others on a trip and wanting to take like some serious photography is a game of luck. You may snap that lucky shot because you just happen to have a camera on you at the moment. But if you really want to take the time and think about things and kind of plan, you really need to have the peace of, or at least I do. I need to have the peace of mind that nobody's waiting for me, that, I just have all the time in the world. And yes, obviously, having walked the Camino a number of times before helped me to know what to expect. Obviously, places wise, terrain wise, there were many places where I knew that I want to be at this place at this time to take that picture, and I pretty much knew what it would look like. I just, in the past maybe didn't have the equipment with me, and this time I did. That said, I also treated myself, or was treated to a few surprises, which I did not expect at all. And I can give an example. One of the pictures, I can't remember which month it is, but it's a picture of Burgos. I had been to Burgos 3 times before, and I had no idea, or I didn't even look for it, that there is a kind of a viewpoint, it's called a mirador in Spanish. Basically, you go up from the cathedral a couple of minutes up on a hill, and then you just have the cathedral on, as if on the palm of your hand right in front of you. And that knowledge came to me as I was there, and I ended up taking a couple of pretty awesome time lapses as well as some night photography there. But yeah, Camino is for me normally not about photography, and that's why I don't look into those things. But this time, because I wanted to make it a little bit more about that as well, it helped to know what to expect when and where. So
I mean, like, I'm looking at the photo you took now in Zubiri, which is in Navarre, near the start of the Camino, and I love the way that when I look at your picture, it I can almost imagine myself back there, sitting by the banks of that exact same river,
mm,
and the feeling of peace and satisfaction and happiness and fulfillment that I had just sitting by that river at that time.
mm.
And thanks to your photo, I'm just feeling those exact same sentiments right now.
Thank you,
Um,
Brad. Yeah, I
no, no,
appreciate it.
that's the magic of your photography. I think it's like, sometimes they say like a smell can take you back to an exact time and place and wash up a memory, or a song can do that as well. But
Mhm.
your images do that for me as well, and I love it. I love the way you've got the reflection of the arches in the bridge kind of blushed in the water.
Mm.
And you can tell, the night sky, sorry, the fading light, and it takes you back to that magical feeling where you're not so hot anymore. You've been sweating all day, and it's that moment where you're like, oh, I can finally kind of just like relax a little bit. You feel a bit
Mhm.
more, yeah, and just it's magical to me.
Mhm.
And I love the way you've got like the lights twinkling in the distance as well, on that picture of Puente La Arena.
Mhm.
And the time lapses you've got on your Instagram as well. They're so clever, and yeah, I just think it's an amazing, a
The
great
best are yet to
idea.
come, let me tell you. Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to because I'm still obviously processing a lot of photography. I'm just, putting a few things out there. My biggest focus after the Camino was to get the calendar ready, and it's ready and out and available. So that's great. And I'm just going through other stuff like time lapses. I'm taking my time to actually look through them because I've taken a lot, and I'm, well, certainly with Instagram, I'm kind of like slowly feeding into it. But yeah, and as far as the calendar, it's
How do
I
you
mean,
choose which image goes with each month? I'm curious because, like, would it be like, oh, you took this photo? Obviously, I know you took the majority of your photos this time, during the
uh,
autumn.
about
Um,
half actually, not the majority. It's
how do you select
exactly
which picture
six.
goes? Is there a story? Is there a reason for it, or?
Well, like I said, I wasn't proceeding geographically, so it just makes sense to me that January picture has some snow in it, and it doesn't happen to be around Saint Jean Pied de Port, but I think it's like whatever feeling the month in question kind of conveys to me, that is what I kind of wanted to put for obvious or maybe for less obvious reasons. Yeah, I was very happy to catch to do some photography which I hadn't had before of autumn and particularly of some of the vineyards and vineyard areas that the Camino traverses, which there's a number, and so October picture is about it depicts a vineyard in changing colors. So, but it's very interesting. Thank you, by the way, for your words. I'm very happy to hear that some of the pictures kind of convey. They remind you of a place because obviously you've been there, and they kind of re-invoke that feeling in you that you had there and makes you remember it. That said, though, I also was to come back to your last question. I was trying to compose the calendar in such a way that it would appeal not only to a former pilgrim who has been to all these places, who will recognize all these places, but also to someone who has not been there before, because the Camino is so full of just the landscapes. They're just objectively beautiful. Like, you don't have to be a pilgrim to just say, wow, like this terrain is just flat out gorgeous. There are multiple UNESCO World Heritage Sites on the Camino, so the calendar depicts two of them. There are two cathedrals. So I try to put a blend of like a
Could you
few.
be which cathedrals are they, just so people know?
Burgos Cathedral is UNESCO
Hmm.
World Heritage, as is Cathedral in Santiago de Compostela.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, actually,
And you've
because
also got a time lapse of Atapuerca on your Instagram.
yeah,
Do you want
that's
to tell the people about Atapuerca and why that's important as well?
Atapuerca is also not the church and not the
But the
village,
actual sites, yeah, the
but
area.
there is an archaeological site just off the Camino. You can see it. I was tempted to go this time. I'm tempted to go every time I pass it, because in my life off the Camino, I actually collect UNESCO World Heritage sites that I've visited. But it's so close and so tempting. But I actually again did not go. But yeah, it's a world famous archaeological dig. Um,
So that'll be a good detour for anyone that's passing through there.
Yeah, which though that's kind of what I wanted to also mention before. When I'm on the Camino, it's hard for me to think of like other stuff, including photography normally, because it's just I try to just be not on the Camino, but like within the way, and I love to travel. Otherwise, I love to visit cities, to visit cultural sites, natural beauties of nature, but on the Camino, it's this whole process, and especially as you said, you walk, you sweat, maybe you have blisters, maybe you're in pain, and you just wait to get to this place. And right here happens to be Atapuerca, UNESCO World Heritage. It's like, okay, I'm going to shift my priorities right now and just going to tend to my current purpose. You know, so but back to the calendar, like yeah, I wanted to compose it so that it would be appealing for not pilgrims, like certainly for people who have been there, for people who are interested in it as maybe an additional drop of inspiration to fill the cup until it flows over and one goes on the Camino. But also, I think I wanted to create something just aesthetically pleasing to a large audience, that someone maybe who's been in the Camino can present someone who hasn't been in the Camino with just because. And yeah, and again, I think I started saying there is a bit of people here and there on some of the images, but a lot of them are just landscapes, and also just like, in my opinion, stunning pieces of architecture and human design. So yeah, I think that was my aim, and I hope I'm pretty pleased with it, actually, I would say.
No, it's I think what for me, if like looking through your photos, every single one of your photos seems to have a mood, and that's what I really like about it. It's got a mood.
Thank
Like
you, sir.
you've either got pictures of, I don't know, pilgrims having a break, and you can see how happy they all are together, or you've got like photos of mountain roads, and you can see just like the how kind of, I guess, as a pilgrim you're walking up that mountain road, and the apprehension that you're walking off into the clouds, up into the
Mm.
clouds, and you feel that same. You look at this picture, like you feel that apprehension where you're like, right, I'm walking all the way up there into those moody looking clouds, into those angry looking clouds,
Mm.
or you've got it kind of taken with blue skies in the background and these beautiful churches, and it's like it's opening up for you rather than closing in on you. I think all of your photos give some kind of feeling and sentiment and mood and help to put you in the place. And I think that's what a good writer does. And that's what music does for you. And honestly,
Mm.
I'm not a photographer, so I never think that deeply about photos. But when I look at your photos in detail, it's like I could just see there's a mood in every single one, whether it's a happy
Mm.
mood or where it's there's apprehension in the air, whether it's like the pilgrim can finally relax. There's something in all of your photos, and I really really like it. And I think just looking, I'm going through them and looking at my comments that I'd written on some of them from months ago. I'm just kind of written, wow, that's amazing, and can I think who wrote wow? Oh, that was me. So yeah, I think I'm really privileged to talk to you. Someone with such a talent, and proud really to promote your work to the listeners of the podcast as well. So if you can just
Thank
tell
you, Brad. I
them,
really, really appreciate
no,
your
I mean
words
it
and
with
your
every,
interest.
with
Yeah.
every drop of grain of sincerity in my body. I really, really mean it because I'm an artistic, well, maybe creative person, should I say, myself,
Mm.
and I really appreciate it when I can see someone's taken the time to not just get their camera out, but they've really thought about it. And then you've not just taken the photo, you've gone away, and I can tell you've done some clever, some little bit of clever Photoshop work with it. So not stripping the photo of its reality and originality. You've just enhanced it with a few little touches here and there, and so that's from conception in your head to creation to manifestation, and I can tell you've put a lot of time and effort and love and
Mm.
pride into what you've done. So I just congratulate you for a great project, really.
Thank you, Brad. I really, really appreciate your words, and I'm very humbled by them. Yeah, yeah.
No, every credit where it's due. It's really, really deserved, and I hope as many people get to see your work as possible because it definitely deserves to be seen. So, where do
Yeah,
where do we where do we
and
find a link to your calendar? Where do we see more of your photography?
and that was actually just your last words remind me also one of the biggest purposes behind creating this product now, because I've thought about it for for a number of years, but what kind of propelled me to do it now, also a little bit against all the odds, because the timing, the Christmas time is already upon us, and the calendar had just come available. But it's the fact that the next year is the Holy Year, and I want to. And because we had this Corona year, I was in the Camino twice, and the second time I went in September, October, I wanted to prove myself. The Camino exists. The spirit hasn't been, quelched by these, events and this global pandemic and whatnot. The Camino exists. The Camino perseveres. The Camino survives. The Camino is going to be there, and it's going to overcome all this stuff that's going on in the world. And my idea is to share my passion for the Camino. That, as I said in the beginning of this podcast, I've extended out in many many ways, by bringing groups, by bringing family, friends, by talking to the whole world that I know about it. And so this time around, I'm doing it via photography as well. And so Instagram is one place where I post my photographs. As far as where the calendar is available, the best place to visit it is my or to get to it is my website. And the reason is because it is available on Amazon, but not in every country. And so the best way, my website is www.caminographer, as in like Camino photographer, put the two words together, www.caminographer.com. And then I have galleries about the French way. There's some video work, actually quite a few more time lapses already up. And then there's shop. When you get to the shop page, you cannot order the calendar off of my website because it was actually published by a publisher. It has ISBN numbers. But what I do have are countries where it's available, with which includes the United States, the UK, Canada, Germany, and a few other countries. And you just click on the country flag, and it takes you directly to the Amazon of that country that only delivers in that country. So if you're from the United States, you click on the American flag, it'll take you to Amazon.com. You will see the product in US dollars, and you can place the order. Um, Above the flags, there is a button that says "Click here to view the full calendar gallery." That takes you to the page of the publisher that actually presents the entire calendar, so you can look at all the months, look at what it looks like. But again, do not click on Amazon there, because it would actually take you to Amazon Co UK, which if you're from the UK, that's not a problem. And the calendar is available in two sizes, in A4 and A3. So it's like letterhead and twice the size of letterhead, I guess. And so that's where the best place to find it would be www.caminographer.com, and then it's /shop, or you just find shop in the menu. And by the way, if you're into my photography, you can check out the galleries that are available. It's not. I just rewrote the site since the Camino also had this inspiration to completely redo it. So what you see is the brand new design, but about only 40 to 50% of photos that I intend to upload, and videos also. So it's a work in progress still.
Max, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your inspiration. I can your love and enthusiasm for the Camino is so infectious, and I hope and I'm sure that's transmitted to the listeners as well. So it's caminographer.com. Click on shop, and you'll find Max's calendar on there, and also feel free to browse and peruse around any of the galleries on Max's website. Until next time, Max, thanks for coming on the podcast for the second time.
Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for like 7 months. I thought you were a worthy guest to get back for a second time, because you've been on the Camino during the COVID times, and because you've got this lovely project with your calendar as well. So, buen camino, and I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Buen camino, Brad. Thank you so much. All the best to you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Maximov, Camino coach and Camino photographer. Like I said, I know we've had him on before, but because he walked the Camino during COVID times, I thought it would be great to get him back on the podcast and ask some specifics and how it was different to when he walked the Camino before COVID, and also to talk about his calendar. And I do recommend looking Max up on Instagram and looking at the wonderful images of the Camino that he's captured, that to me bring the Camino magic to life and wash up those amazing feelings and memories that you get when you're on the Camino. So like I said, really hope you enjoyed that conversation, that episode with Max for the second time. So just before we finish the podcast, there's a few special mentions to those who have been reaching out on social media this last week, and we're going to mention Katie Coughlin Trott again. Thanks for saying hello. Mark Stevens, who we interviewed back around the earlier parts of Series 1. I think it was in the 20s, something like that. Erica Claro, who reached out on our Answers to Camino de Santiago Questions Facebook group, and she said, walk alone or with a partner? And my answer to that was, depending on what you want to get out of it. I was definitely more sociable when I walked on my own, and the experiences were very different, and they had their merits, and they had their pros and cons. But I do think that it really does depend on what you want to get out of it. I know for a fact that walking with my wife brought us closer as well. I saw a side of my wife that I'd never seen before when she walked the Camino, and it made me love her even more for it. So it definitely brought us closer. So I guess if you want your relationship to evolve, it'll be a great thing, and to find out new things about each other. But I really do think it depends on what you want to get out of it. If you want a bit of time to yourself, a bit of time to think things through, a bit of time to process some challenges or some events in your life, then maybe going alone might be a good thing. But for me, going with my wife certainly wasn't a bad thing. So again, I think it depends on what you want to get out of it, and I think you got to be honest with yourself as well when making that decision. So a special thank you to Martin Jameson, who's always very helpful and full of great ideas. Martin, who is probably trekking the trails in Canada right now. I hope you're keeping warm and staying healthy. And yeah, and always nice to hear from you. Rick Warren, who's recently liked the page, Eamon Kavanagh, Richard Morse, David Talon, who I think shared the podcast on the Camino de Santiago .me forum. So thanks for doing that, David. That was really kind of you. Angela Robertson, Valentina Belli, who's from Italy and will be on the podcast very soon. Mark David Walsh, Patian in New Ireland, Kathleen Bertoldo. And thank you to all you guys for saying hello. It is you guys being in contact with me on the podcast and give me your kind words is always champagne in my veins. Like I said before, puts those bounce in my boots. And yes, certainly motivates me to keep producing the podcast. And if you are enjoying the podcast and you'd like to help spread the word and help others keep the Camino dream alive, then feel free to share these episodes with anyone that you think might appreciate it and it could be useful to. So Camino de Santiago forums, Camino de Santiago Facebook groups, wherever you think it could be helpful for you to do that, I'll be very, very grateful. And that helps me to increase awareness of the podcast and ultimately make the world a better place, because the more pilgrims there are in the world presenting as the best versions of themselves, like I've said, I believe the Camino does, then I think a better place will be the world we live in. So yeah, so a few more special thank you to Kathy Potter Abney, to Stu Hagen, last week's guest, to Brian Horn, to Julie Walker Whitehead, Rick Prater, as always. Thanks, Rick, for saying hello. Jennifer Myers, Joanne Allen Gale. Not to mention Claire Bennett, Reep Tan Juanpe, Reep, sorry if that name is terribly pronounced, Mariela Guillen. Mariela, ¿cómo estás? ¿Cuánto tiempo? And of course, Lee Brennan from the Camino Cafe. Look up Lee Brennan on the Camino Cafe. She's doing some wonderful things on there. Please look them up. Robert Hansen, Richard Morse, who I've mentioned already. So yes, thank you to all those guys. Everyone that's listening, please do like, share, and if you get a chance, subscribe and review to the podcast. That helps me to increase awareness of the podcast. And that's the way you can support me in producing the podcast. That would be wonderful. So, going to leave you this week with the second part of the chapter that I shared with you last week, which was a little snippet of my audio book. So, chapter 14 from my best-selling international Camino de Santiago memoir, The Only Way is West. If you like what you hear, you can find it on audible.com. That's audible.com. Audible.com. The audio book's on there. And if you like a good read, you'd like to get your nose between the covers and to keep you motivated to walk the Camino and to get a real, very honest impression of what walking the Camino is like, you can always read my book as well. That's on Kindle, that's on Amazon, and that is The Only Way is West. Just look it up on Amazon.com. So I'll give you the second part of chapter 14. And that chapter is called The Lesser Spotted Pilgrim. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Hope to hear from you next week. Until then, buen camino, ultrea, move forward with courage, stay healthy, keep those Camino dreams alive, because sometime soon the Camino is going to fling its doors wide open again, and we're all going to be able to get to the place we know and love more than anyone else, anywhere else, should I say, on the planet. Thanks for listening, guys. Hasta luego.
Chapter 14. The Lesser Spotted Pilgrim. In the restful setting of my own room in the convent, I fell asleep before sundown and woke way before sunrise. At 5 a.m, with still not a crack in the dawn, the city streets were already alive with peregrinos. All the early risers shared the goal of getting to the next stop before midday to avoid the savaging sun. Spotting the yellow arrows among all the street signs, billboards and fly posters in the dark was tricky, and I took a wrong turn more than once. Whenever someone saw me looking lost, I'd save face by digging out my camera and taking a picture as if on a planned excursion. Thankfully, with so many pilgrims around, I was able to scan the streets, spot someone going the right way, and chase them surreptitiously. Due, as always, forever west, I spent those first couple of hours looking over my shoulder, determined not to miss the sunrise. As I broke out of the city limits and walked round a huge lake in a picturesque country park, the theatre of first light finally commenced. The spotlights gently brightened and dawn drew its jaundiced spears, charging the retreating darkness to unveil a backdrop of thick forest on surrounding hills. A submerging fish sent ripples pulsing across the lake's previously still waters, breaking the glassy surface and the silence. I was walking close to the water's edge, and the faint but repellent sulphuric scent of rotten eggs coming from the banks killed any grand ideas I had of taking a sunrise skinny dip. As the light grew ever paler, the birds stirring in the trees around the lake began to chirp and chatter. A fading fingernail of moon dug into the sky, the defeated night's last act of defiance. How privileged I was to have a private performance and the best seat in the house at Nature's Theatre. On my way out the park, I met Marcellino, a man with a big heart, a welcoming smile and an unruly white beard on its own pilgrimage to the wild side. "Peregrino!" he bellowed, with arms wide open. Set out in front of him on a picnic bench in an area reserved for caravans and campervans was an array of Camino paraphernalia. There were walking staffs, scallop shells, apples, bananas, biscuits, bottles of water and wine. I grabbed an apple and a banana and fished around in my pockets for some coins. "No," he said with a stern hand. "No money, please. Right here," he insisted, thrusting a notebook at me. Flipping it open, he displayed page after page of messages written by pilgrims from around the world. Travellers from Slovakia, South Korea, the Philippines, Brazil to name but a few, had written Marcellino words of thanks. I added Basildon to that list of exotic places and impulsively scrawled some lyrics from a song I'd recently written that I thought were fitting for a pilgrimage. Just a searcher like me. As I walk with a few good men, I wonder how to find more along the way. Do they stare at the stars and feel inner peace? Do they smile at a stranger and feel released? It's the searchers I seek, the wisdom that they speak, the lessons that they teach. Just a searcher like me. When I passed his book back, he surprised me again by gifting me a bottle of wine and a walking staff. I tried in vain one more time to offer him money. "Free, always free, no money. I give only for peregrinos," he said, before proudly presenting a framed photo of himself in front of the cathedral in Santiago. "I know," he said, tapping his finger on his temple. "I am peregrino many times before and know the life." 5 minutes after I'd left him behind, Marcellino chuntered past me in a clapped-out car as I skirted a dual carriageway. With his long, dark, grey streaked hair flailing in the wind and a smile full of teeth desperate to win attention from his lively beard, he stuck his head out the window and blasted on the horn. After circling a roundabout ahead, he came back past me again on the other side of the road. This time, he pumped the horn with a football-style beep, 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 and added a thumbs up and that unforgettable smile, just as sincere and warm as when we first met. Marcellino was a guy I knew for 5 minutes, but his willingness to help people experiencing the same triumphs and tribulations he once tasted as a pilgrim meant I'd remember him forever. Despite spending much of the morning uncomfortably close to busy roads, by 9 a.m. I'd made easy work of 20 mostly unpleasant kilometres. As always, the best way to endure walking against the traffic was a good old sing-along. With my memory jogged by Crazy Frank's lyrical remixes, I chuckled to myself, remembering some of my mother's antics during my childhood. Early morning, she'd be downstairs doing the housework while Matt and I were still in bed. Her favourite radio station would be playing, and she'd join in with any song she vaguely knew, randomly changing the words, often to comic effect. Many days my brother and I would lie giggling in our bunk beds, not wanting to get up and interrupt her while in full flow. Don't you want me, baby? Would become, don't you want my bogies? The wind beneath my wings, she'd change to, the wind beneath my sheets. Our favourite, though, was her amendment to, wake me up before you go. Wake me up before you blow off. I still don't know to this day if she did this because she knew we were listening or because it was a way to amuse herself while cleaning. I do know, though, that it's one of my favourite memories from when I was young. It makes me remember the better times with Dad too. Though he and I were often at odds due to my unfaltering defence of Mum in their slanging matches, we'd forget those differences when we watched West Ham together. Crying on each other's shoulders at the end of the matches was nearly always the outcome. But on one special Sunday afternoon, our beloved Hammers actually won an important game. It was an away fixture against our promotion rivals and a place in the Premier League was at stake. With the Hammers protecting a slender one-goal advantage, the home team peppered our goal for the equaliser that would take them up. Having endured wave after wave of attacks, West Ham countered and doubled their lead with 5 minutes to go, all but ensuring their place in the top division. Yelling, "Yes!" at a volume had our spaniel, Hannah, cowering behind the sofa. My dad leapt to his feet and threw the roast dinner on his tray all over the carpet. Arms aloft, holding a chicken drumstick in each hand, he came at me for a celebratory hug. It was the one embrace we shared during my childhood. For all our crosswords down the years, at least we have that unbeatable chicken wing hug and West Ham promotion to look back on. Reminiscing about those happier times, I stopped to redress my blisters in the tranquil village of Ventosa. Sitting on some stony steps outside the albergue, demolishing yet more bananas and muesli bars, I was approached by a real-life Mary Poppins. In a soft, high-pitched voice, the woman explained she'd hurt herself and was taking a rest day. Strapped to her ankle with a bandage was a handful of heather. "Why have you got those on your ankle?" I asked, pointing at the flowers. "They have healing powers. Just ask them for help and they do it," she squeaked in a strong Italian accent. "How do they help? What do they actually do?" I asked, with a cynical arching eyebrow. "I don't know, but I know they do help very much," she insisted. Whispering some indecipherable sweet talk to a fresh bunch of heather, she sat down next to me and pressed more onto the injured area. When she told me about the flowers, I thought her cheese had slid off her crackers, but it was colliding with colourful characters like her and Marcellino that made my adventure so special. She seemed like the kind of person who believed in the unbelievable just because life was more fun like that. And why not? Shortly after Mary Poppins flew off on an umbrella, a guy wearing headphones the size of breakfast bowls appeared at the bottom of the steps. He looked like a nightclub DJ who'd taken a wrong turn. "Is there a cafe near here?" he shouted in a French accent over the hissing dance music leaking from his cans. "I think I saw one around the corner," I yelled back, pointing over his shoulder. "Thank you," he said, returning whence he'd come, throwing his shoulders left and right to the music. As sanctimonious as it sounds, I couldn't help thinking he was cheating himself out of a deeper personal growth by listening to music. While walking, I remained totally disconnected from all technological devices. Switching off my energy-sapping mobile and silencing that annoying little child always begging to be looked at was liberating. Mentally, I felt sharper, clearer, lighter even. Recent studies have shown that we look at our phones on average 150 times per day, and that devices have reduced the human attention span to 8 seconds. Less than a goldfish. Keeping my mobile out of mind and sight was a lesson my walk had already taught me. I made a note to incorporate a regular period of digital detox into my post-Camino life to free up some cognitive bandwidth. And why would I want to listen to music when I could treat my ears to the Camino soundtrack, The insects croaking in the grass and the rustle of lizards scurrying for cover in the bushes. The cowbells ringing in the fields and echoing across the mountain valleys. The birds in rival nests and neighbouring groves competing to out-tweet each other in velocity, volume and prettiness of melody. The leaves on the trees flickering like ticker tape fizzing in the wind. The foreign tongues of fellow greenos and the church bells chiming in the villages. The advancing and receding buzz of circling bees, wasps and mosquitoes. The lyrics and melodies that came from nowhere and looped over and over to the rhythm of my boots beating the ground. Surely all those audible delights were a more fitting ensemble than Smack My Bitch Up